always put a wrench on here. So this here is what you're gonna have after you get through cutting them holes. Coil wire runs right into the back. All right, y'all. Next step, as the instructions indicate, will be to take your teeth out. We've got to get the grill out. We've got to get your honkers out, and we've got to get the hood latch brace assembly that goes down to the bottom of the core support, the grill, and the top of the core support here. We've also got to punch a few holes and do a few other things. You don't have to take the headlight buckets themselves out, just the grill shell. So we'll get on with that, and I'll show you what it all looks like once we get that done. Well, as you can see, we've got the grill out, we've got the horns off, we've got the hood latch assembly out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is pre-assemble the condenser, the dryer, and the lines and brackets associated with it, as notated on page 34 of the instructions. Like it says, you build this on the workbench. This is your condenser. This little black box has your little dryer, brackets, and your hardware and stuff, and then your line kit's going to have the lines you need and the switch. You can see the biggest problem with the AC systems in the Mustang is a lot of the Moparts are this way too. The cutout here in front of the grill is quite small. I mean, this is a very small condenser. Anyways, I'm going to put this all together on the bench, put the lines on. You always use like some compressor oil or whatever on your O-rings and your fittings when you put them on. I just try to get them, snug. That way I get everything bolted up. If I need to tweak them a little bit, I can, and then final tighten everything with the lines. Unless you're in a situation where you can't get good access, but it'd be real careful when you're tightening the ones that go into the condenser that you put a wrench and hold this. You got to have a wrench holding this. You don't want to bust the seal loose on the edge of this condenser. You'll be buying a new one. So always put a wrench on here, hold it, crescent wrench or whatever, and then snug your lines up with the regular line wrench. But I'm going to put that together, bring you back, show you what it looks like, and then I'll stuff it in the car. Well, now we get to do some voiceover because I forgot to turn the radio off. Don't feel like getting flagged by YouTube for copyright infringement. So here we see a lovely completed condenser assembly with this very nice looking dryer and line assembly. Ain't she cute? I hope you think so. Nope, yep, no. Here's the other side, yep. Still looks the same. Okay. All right, now right here, there's two little dimples. Right here and right here. You got to drill them out with inch and whatever. So I think it was 1 3/8 hole saw. It's in the instructions. You just got to punch that out. It's easy. Alrighty then. So this here is what you're gonna have after you get through cutting them holes. Basically, the top hole saw punches this there, bottom hole saw punches that, and then there's like in a factory core support, there's like 2 breakaway tabs here and here, so it'll just fall out. So you just deburr it, touch up the paint around the hole, paintbrush or whatever, or Sharpie. Next step is going to be to set the condenser down there, and they use the same holes as the latch assembly. So you'll have your latch assembly bolt will go through there, and the condenser, same for those two. So I'm not going to go ahead and put the grill and the headlight buckets and stuff back in there because I don't like leaning across that stuff while I'm working in there. And I know I got a lot to do here, trying to get that power steering all squared away. So I wouldn't recommend putting your grill in until you're done, preferably with the system charged up. Stay tuned. Well, this is what she looks like. Condenser's installed, and the 3 bolts on the hood latch assembly are all tight. Just a quick overview what we're looking at here. That's all securely mounted. Your lines are going to come out of that top nipple and the one out of that dryer and go right through that hole. At this stage, I've got to get in here and figure out what all is going on, or should I say gone wrong, with this belt alignment issue with this compressor. Pretty sure that bracket right there in between the pump and the water pump is off something else. In fact, I know it is. It's been welded and cut and chopped on. But my 302, 351 air compressor bracket mounts right here on the front of the cylinder head on the 3 attach points. So basically, I'm gonna measure kind of where this pump is sitting right now, and I'm just gonna pull it off and lay it down the engine bay and go ahead and install my compressor bracket. So your engine may very well be a different engine than this. So the air compressor bracket and compressor mounting itself is going to be different. So I'm gonna go ahead and figure this out and mount the bracket up and get the compressor set on it. And then I'll bring you back so that you can see what we gotta do with the lines. Well, hey gentlemen, so I've got the compressor bracket mounted, and I finally figured out the fiasco that was this power steering pump bracket assembly. That bracket, I don't know what it came from, but they'd cut it and welded it and chopped it. Basically this whole edge here, they chopped off and re-welded. Basically it was supposed to be adjustable, but it had no. So in its configuration now, it's basically gonna be a fixed point, and we're gonna use the air compressor and its brackets as the adjustment point. So that's just gonna sit there. It really didn't have any adjustment to it anyways, because this line is right between the manifold and the shock tower. So to get this thing, the power steering gearbox, kind of lined up, I had to make some spacers, which you can see where my thumb is, and right there in between the pump and the housing. But I got it where it's pretty much dead lined up. And there's a little bit of adjustment forwards and backwards, you know, if need be for whatever in the future. I do a lot of this bracket and fabrication as far as pulleys, and you've already seen me do that, so it doesn't matter. But quick way to check with a long straight edge. It's like you should be in full contact with both sides on the top and bottom of one pulley straight across to the top and bottom of the next. So if you're like this, or there's a big air gap like where my pinky is, you can kind of see if it's like that, you're wrong. So just, you want it pretty square all the way across. So anyways, the way they had this rigged up, I measured it. This pulley assembly and this pump was a full inch farther forward than it is right now. So there was an inch of alignment problem and only 8 inches from here to the water pump, and it was a full inch off. I don't know how he wasn't just throwing belts off, but this is the compressor bracket. Yours is gonna be very similar depending on what engine you have. So now what I gotta do is set the compressor on here, see what all it runs into. Typically they run into something. And then I'm going to take a belt measurement. Belt's gonna go around the crank, around the power steering, around the compressor, and around the water pump. I mean, ideally, like with the GM setups, you'd have a third pulley on the crank and have it just drive the power steering pump, but we don't have that, and he sure don't want to spend the money on all new set of pulleys and all that. So this is what we got. Shouldn't have a problem with belt slippage. Worst case scenario, more than likely the power steering pump would be what would slip, but we're gonna go ahead and mount the compressor and the brackets and see what we get. So I got the air compressor sitting on here. It's all loose. I can still slide it forwards, backwards. I don't even have the nuts on the back of it. You can see the only clearance issue we're gonna have is the coil right there. Coil wire runs right into the back. What I do typically when I'm trying to get a new belt length, because usually these kits don't have any recommendation on belt size, and this one definitely won't. My belt, like I said, it's got 4 pulleys to come around. So what I always do is I get the compressor or power steering pump or alternator, whatever it is. I get it set kind of at the lower point of its adjustment, meaning, you know, the loosest AKA the smallest diameter belt. See, like this one, I've got a lot of travel up to tighten it. And what I'll usually do is I'll get a rope that's about the diameter of that. Just a cheap, it doesn't matter what kind of rope, but it's just got to be close to that diameter, like a nylon or whatever. And I'll actually wrap it around all the way up to where it needs to be. Like I said, somewhere at the lower end of the adjustment, looser. And I'll just take the rope, butt the pieces together, get it where the length of the rope is going to be the length of the belt. Then I'll go to the parts store and I'll buy usually 4 or 5 belts, you know, a little looser, a little tighter, everywhere close to that whatever measurement that belt winds up being. Which you can take that rope that you put on there, lay it out on the floor, and measure it. Take that measurement into the parts store, and that's how all the belts are sized. You just go out in the back and just say, hey, get me every belt that's within 2 inches of this diameter. Walk out with a handful and just take back what you don't want. It's much, much easier than just buying one belt, going back, buying another belt, going back. Just buy like 6 of them at a time and take back what you don't need. Save yourself the gas, because you know that's what you fellers usually do. Make 3 trips just to get the right belt, and it's usually not the right one anyways. But that's a pretty simple process, so that's what I got to do next. I'll probably go ahead and start fitting the condenser, refrigerant lines, routing the ones all the way over to the firewall, and kind of show you what we got to do there. All right, so to pick up where I left off last time, condenser is in, the lines are in. I had to rebend this one right here in this radius a little bit. Basically, it was too tight and it was hitting the inside edge, right about where that Sharpie mark is. But if you're careful, you can pretty easily rebend this. I went ahead and got my compressor installed. Just got to tighten up a couple of bolts. Got the situation there figured out with the power steering pump. That had absolutely nothing to do with this AC install, but I had to machine some spacers, those black spacers right there, and buy a couple of more to get the belt alignment correct. So it's all pretty much squared away. The only thing I had an interference problem was the coil wire. I was able to scoot the coil back a little bit, and I just went ahead and put this heat shrink tubing around the boot just so it wouldn't arc out on the back of the compressor. Another quick tip, I like to run my compressor power wire through the extra holes in the compressor and then put a zip tie on it. Keeps it from getting up in your pulley because it's just right there. So the pulley bracket was easy to install. My main problem here, like I said, was already power steering, but super convenient, really easy. Then I ran the lines, and all of your Mustangs are pretty much going to be the same routing path. Got your suction and your discharge. Barely clears power steering there. But anyways, comes up around. The hoses were crimped on both ends, pre-crimped, which is not my favorite thing. I like to cut them, measure them, and get them figured out where I want, you know, and have them crimped myself. But it worked out okay. They come across over here. And then down here, we have our main panel there where they go through the firewall. Get your heater hoses on there. The top one has the hot water valve in it that goes back to the water pump. Then down there, way down low in the center of the shot, is a grommet where I passed that black and white wiring harness for the hot water valve and my white wire for the compressor, which I ran around, just zip tied to the wiring harness, to the hoses there. It goes straight to the compressor. I also run, per Classic Auto Air's instructions, a ground wire either straight to the battery or straight to the end of the main negative battery cable, which is what I did there. There is no place to put it on the negative battery post, so that just helps with any ground interference problems, resistance problems, technically. So that pretty much wraps up the underhood part of it as far as the installation goes. At this point, I'm going to go through and check all my fittings one more time. I'm going to put my gauge set on here and pull the vac on the system. And while I'm doing that, I'll get up here in the front and put the grill back in. Now you want to vac it down for at least 45 minutes. I usually do about that, and then I let it sit and make sure the vacuum, that it doesn't lose vacuum, you know, through a leak or whatever. Lots of times I let it sit overnight, but I'm not going to go in to do that today because it's early in the morning. So I should be able to, after lunch, recharge the system and see what we're dealing with. Anyways, system looks pretty good, reasonably professional. So I'll bring you back when it's time to charge the system up and get the grill back in it. Well, as the blind man can clearly see, we got our dentures put back in her. And you should also be able to notice big old set of gauges up there and that little vacuum pump down there. This is the proper way to pull a vacuum on these systems. If you don't have this set up here, you need to take your car to a mechanic shop and let them professionally charge it. You need to pull a vacuum on it for 45 minutes, get all the moisture and contaminants out of the system, and then charge it up with 2 cans of Freon. So do not tempt this with one of those little aerosol can looking things with the gauge on them from O'Reilly's. Do not do that. You'll potentially wreck your new system, and it probably won't work anyways. So now that she's looking pretty again, we'll let it sit for a while with that vacuum pump on it, and we'll see if we can bring a little stuff into the system and see if this air works. Last thing I'll have to do after that is seal up the holes in the firewall. I never do that until the system's fully functional and I know there's no problems, because that takes a little bit of time, sealing up all the firewall penetrations, and you don't want to have to redo that for no reason. If in the event you have to take something back out, you don't want to waste any more time than you already wasted. So I'll bring you back once we get this charged up and see if it works. Oh man, it's getting hot today. Well, I tell you what, fellers, she took a charge, pulled down right about where it needs to be. This can's actually still got a tiny bit left in it. It takes exactly 2 cans. Backed it down for about an hour and a half. I sprung a leak in my high pressure side, so it doesn't really matter what that is so much anyways, because these systems hold exactly 2 cans. That pressure's right. Looks good. Belt's not jumping around. Try to give you a better look over here. Top's got just a little bit hot to it, but after the motor cools off, I'll snug that up just a tiny bit. Nothing slipping. And its heat index right now is like 105, I think. And let me tell you what, you see my lens on my camera is fogging up. It feels good in here. My air ducts haven't come in yet. I got to build a bezel for this one, but I ordered through Classic Autowear the correct factory style, well, they're not factory, but the correct aftermarket round bezels that'll fit with the right bezel on that concave section. Temperature's doing fine, which is surprising. It's really hot. Feel that? That feels good, guys. And that's my other air duct is poking down the floor. I had my foot there in my flip-flops, but my foot got cold. So, well, I flipped it around and cleaned this that camera a little better. Anyways, appreciate you watching this. Hopefully, if you're wanting to buy this kit, what I've done will kind of give you a rough idea of what you're getting into, whether or not you can handle it or not, basically what everything should look like when it's done. System's working great. You may occasionally have to set your idle screw up a little bit. If you got a big cam, you might end up having to buy a idle kick-up solenoid. It's a little dash pot looking thing, electric solenoid that mounts on your carburetor linkage, and it ties into your wire that goes to the compressor. Basically, when your compressor receives power, it receives power and it goes boop, and it hits your accelerator linkage and kicks your idle up a couple hundred RPMs or whatever. This car doesn't seem to need it at all. It's a stock motor, so it's fine. Like I said, it's really hot today, and it's doing just fine. Of course, we're not sitting in the sun, but this air is nice and cold, and we're not even moving. So please hit the like button and share, subscribe if you hadn't already, and we'll see you for the next round, whatever that might be. Thank you.